Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Everhart Museum's second Sundays Folk Arts Series. My name is Kimberly Crafton, and I am pleased to be bringing you a wonderful array of folk artists across our region. We are pleased to be partnering with the Pennsylvania Council on the Arts as a folk and traditional arts partner, which means that we have the grand pleasure of getting to help identify, document, and support folk artists from across our 6-county region. These counties begin in the Endless Mountains in Susquehanna and Wyoming counties. They cross into the counties of Lackawanna and Luzerne in the Valley cities, and over into the Pocono Mountains, Wayne and Pike counties. And across that region, we have an amazing array of communities, agricultural, industrial, tourist type communities, and so many different people, some who have grown up here, have their roots here, and others who were born in regions far, far away, maybe sometimes across the globe, but who have come to call this place their home. And they have brought with them a beautiful array of artistic traditions from around the globe. We're looking forward to meeting over the course of these second Sundays all throughout 2021, various artists from all over and from many, many traditions. So today on our second Sunday series, I'm pleased to introduce Sujata Nair Mulloth, who is the director and the founder of the Kala Classical School of Indian Dance in Clarks Summit, Pennsylvania. And Sujata, welcome. We are so happy to have you here. And we look forward to this conversation. Our conversations on these second Sundays are about the art, which is the core of why we're here. But they're very specifically a conversation personally about why this art means so much to you. Where in your experience as an artist where was it born? Where does it come through? And how does it express itself into the world? And so welcome and thank you for being here.
Namaste, and thank you for having me.
It's beautiful. I love the colors that you wear. I love your background. I can imagine you dancing there. Is this your rehearsal studio for your personal rehearsal studio?
Yes, it is. Yes.
So this is a beautiful place where you come to really feel most yourself.
Yes, actually, yes, that is so true.
Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing it with us. That means a lot. I know that there's a lot that we want to talk about in this time, but I want to, I think, start, and please, I know you will be sharing with us some of the tradition to put this into context, but there have been many interviews with you, and there have been many times when you had to explain to students how to do this and how to do that. But of the many questions in interviews and in classes that have been asked of you, what are some of the things that you maybe wished that someone would have asked you? Something that you never really got to, express in a public way, if you would share that with us.
Yes, you're right. People ask me technical questions of what a specific hand gesture means, or why we do use a specific kind of music and all that. And those are, very relevant and pertinent to the art form itself. But then behind the presentation is the artist, right, who is presenting the art form. And so I wish someone had asked me how I have grown, how I have evolved as an artist, and as a human being, how I have evolved over the years as a human being because of my art. So those are the two questions that I feel, I wish somebody asked me, and I would love to talk about that.
Do you mind if we do? I mean, that would be the greatest gift, because these conversations are meant to do that little, just slide under the surface and get at really what is the core and the heart of an artist that is carrying on a tradition.
The thing. Well, in the beginning, when I started learning, I really had an interest for the art, and which is why I started learning this art form. For me, it was more of course, I liked the movement and I liked the dance and I loved doing it. But besides that, I think in my early years, it was more the dazzle of the performance, of going out there and presenting your art and being appreciated for what was being, what I had presented. And, that made me feel good that, yes, I'd done a good job. I had, used the correct movements and I had done it very aesthetically and all of that. But as time went on and I, was getting, what shall I say, more and more steeped into the art, if you will, or imbibing more and more aspects of the art form, I think I began to understand so many different things. So if I was, say, portraying a damsel in distress, say, in my dance, in the early years, I would be very careful about using the right hand gestures and the right eye movements so that I could, portray the artist. But as time went on, I found myself trying to understand that character, to understand that the role that I was playing, or the aspects of that character's personality that made me think, maybe, So like there's one role that I love to play, and that is of this, it's a historical event that actually happened. There were two, warring nations, and the kings decided to decide decide who was going to win or who was going to take over the other one's territory, right, based on a game of dice. And, one king, he first lays at stake his land, then he lays and loses, of course, because the other king cheats in the game of dice. And then he lays at stake his brothers, and finally he has nothing left. So he says, okay, this time I'm going to play again, and I'm going to lay at stake my wife. And of course he loses again. And then, the woman is insulted. She's brought into the open court, and then they try to take her clothes off, and all of that happens. So the first time I was presenting it, I would just go through the motions and make sure that I was telling the story correctly. Yeah. But then as I, grew up, if you will, or evolved as an artist, I began to bring in the different ideas of, say, maybe presenting her anger or her disgust at the fact that she, a human being who's supposed to be equal to her husband, is laid at stake by him. So I began to understand and question these and bring in those emotions and expressions into my presentation. Now, the story is the same, but I would say my presentation evolved, if you will. And then later on, as a teacher, when I moved here to the United States, I had to communicate and explain these stories or these presentations. And at that point, I not only thought about the original story, but the character and all of that, and whatever she was going through. And also the other thing, I tried to connect it to what was going on today. Now, this historical event was supposed to have taken place around 900 BCE. And what do we have today? The Me Too movement. It's so much a part of our social discourse today. So, I mean, what you're seeing today, what is actually supposed to have happened, 2,000 years ago, is unfortunately happening again today. So making those connections so that the audience not only sees the dance and the presentation and recognizes the story, but you also think a little about, where we come as a society. So the story, I use the story to get people to think a little. So, which I wouldn't have done when I started,
right.
In the beginning. So I would think that that's one way in which I have grown as an artist, as I've evolved as an artist. I've become more aware as an artist. And it is a little bit of that awareness and that, that learning and that deeper understanding that I now try to share with my students and with the audience.
Oh, I love this because, you have two evolutions going on. One was your first evolution of, learning a word for it would be rote. What is the mechanism of the movement to tell the story aesthetically and pleasingly and accurately, as you're saying, but then to bring it inside of you and then to try to maybe allow personal experiences of yours come out to represent the broader story of a woman in this situation. So your experiences as a human being are now funneling out and growing out into the audience. And then so you're bringing a personal viewpoint of that universal story forward, which I love because no other artist could do it that way. That is uniquely you. And then when you came here to the United States, I'm guessing from what we've talked about before that you felt the role of a cultural ambassador, in presenting these stories. And then your evolution goes into how do I tie that into what's happening on the entire planet right now, which is the way that women's voices are rising together, to speak about collective injustice. And this is beautiful. Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. Well, I'm glad we asked what no one has asked you before, because that's
Thank you.
Absolutely delightful. And maybe we'll just have a series of, continuations someday. We'll just continue to talk about that because I'm sure you have many, many others. But what would you like to show us first so that we can put into context for the audience your art that we will be continuing to discuss in the rest of rest of our conversation?
Okay. So basically the art form that I present is classical Indian dance. So just like you have classical ballet, this is the classical dance from India. And I think the only difference is, well, there are a lot of similarities coming to think about it. You have positions like plie and demi-plie and all of that in ballet, and we have the same in our dance as well. And I guess that gets us thinking about the fact that, we may look different, we may speak a different language, but inside we have the same number of muscles and bone structure is exactly the same. And so human beings, when they, or in different parts of the world, when they experimented with movement, they ended up, getting some of the same movements because they're using, the same number of muscles and joints. So, basically it makes us realize that we're all the same, underneath, which is interesting. And
very, very important.
Yes, today. And this art form actually started in the southern part of India. And I would like to share the map of India, and you might have a better understanding of where exactly it started from. And another picture that I have to show you is the picture of an Indian temple, because it is inside the temple that this art form grew. Because in India, we believe that everything is the gift of the universe, is the gift of the divine conscience, which is the basic belief of the Hindu religion. And so that is the basic idea. So now in the temples, the dances were a gift from God. This art form was a gift from God. And that which was given to us is, given back or offered back to the divine, was the general idea. So if there was a morning prayer service, there would be a morning performance. If there was an evening prayer service, there would be an evening performance. So it was inside the precincts of the temple that the dance was actually performed. Now, this meant that only people who came into the temples got to see the dance. And many of these dances were a form of storytelling. So, the stories from mythology or what shall I say, basic rules of life that, people should follow, they were all retold in the form of dance. So it was an interesting way to educate the people who came. Mm-hmm. However, if it was a Hindu temple, it was only the Hindus who came in here, to watch. And because of that, there was a large part of the Indian population that did not get to see this art form. And all that changed because of one person. And I will talk about that person a little later. So this is the map of India. And as you can see, India is divided into so many different states. But the only difference between the United States and here and India is that every region speaks a different language. They dress differently, they have a different cuisine, and in many ways they have a different culture. So if you move from one state to the next, you will find that there is, everything seems very, very different. And because of this, we have 6 styles of Indian classical dance. Now, all of these dances started in the temples, in the Hindu temples, and all of them started as a form of worship. But in the north, you have one style where the costume is different, the music is a little different. Now, the stories that are represented and the movements are also a little different. Now, the movements are also dictated by the costume. So, if you are wearing a long skirt, which they do in the northern part of India, there would be a lot of twirling and swirling movements. So that was a part of, so all of those things influenced the art. Then you have an art in the eastern part of India, where again, a particular style of dressing was used, a particular style of jewelry was used. So all that has influenced the art, but the art did start within the temples, and they were a part of the service of the prayer service of the temple. Then the dance form that I perform started in the southern part of India. And in the south, again, it was started in the temples, and the costume is different, the jewelry is different, because the traditions are different there. So, which is why we find that there are 6 different forms, each starting in a different part of India, where you have different costumes, you have different songs in different languages, and movements that might be a little different, but the general spirit is the same. So this is just for you to understand, just to give you an idea of the map of India. Oops. Yes. Now this is a typical Indian temple. Now it is within the precincts of the temple that the dance originated, and it evolved over more than 2,000 years. Now the first literary evidence that we have about the existence of this dance form dates back to the 1st century BC. The 1st century CE, Common Era, which means that this art is at least 2,000 years old. And in that piece of literature, they talk about this dance having been in existence for many, many years. So although we don't know when exactly it originated, we know definitely that it is at least 2,000 years old. So it's very old. Now, every temple had a special place called the Arang, which was a raised platform, as you might be able to see it to the side of this temple. And this is where the dancers used to perform. And this arang, or this raised stage, was situated right outside the main sanctuary of the temple. So it is almost like as if you were offering your presentation to God. So this is where the art form, originated. But today, if you go to these temples, you will still see those age-old, those ancient temples. You might still see the stage over there to one side, but you will not see any temple dancers. And that is because of the fact that the tradition of temple dancing has been discontinued. And the dancing has been brought out of the temple and into the modern day auditoriums. And with it, of course, has been a lot of change in the sense that it's become secular. It can be performed and learned by anyone. We have stories and music from different traditions of the world that are incorporated in their presentations. So that is the major change that has happened, over the years. So that is just a little bit about the different styles of dancing in India and about the style that I present.
And you had mentioned to me at one time that had you been born earlier than you were, for instance, in your parents' generation, you would not have been able to learn this dance. So, so that's one of my questions. And the second one is, so the other, does a person wanting did you have a choice of which version of the 6 traditional dances you wanted, or did the one that you learn, you had to learn the one from your region? So those are my 2 questions.
Yes, because to answer your first question, the art form began, 2,000 years ago, and it was very carefully preserved within the temple precincts. Now, these temples were supported by the local rulers. They used to give them grants of land. So with that money, they would, train the dancers. All these dancers were, highly educated. They were in literature, poetry, reading, writing, music, all of those things. And they were supported by the temple. But then came the colonial era and the colonization of India by Britain. And of course, the colonizers were definitely not interested in preserving the art form, or for that matter, the temples. Now, they took over the local rulers, and they also took over their land. Mm-hmm. So there was no support for the temples, which meant that they were left to figure out what they were going to do with this important part of their temple ritual. And what they did was that they did whatever they could, and the temple dancers, the number of dancers kept shrinking, and they really had no money, and they started doing what they had to do to survive. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, that gave them a bad reputation, and not only the dancers, but the dance as well, unfortunately.
Right.
So, people from respectable families would never, ever, ever learn that dance or perform it.
Wow.
But then all that changed thanks to one lady, actually. And it's a very interesting story, actually. I have some pictures, and that might, help you understand how we got to save this beautiful dance form. So this is the person who is responsible for saving the art form and bringing it out of the temples into modern day auditoriums. Her name is Rokhamani Devi. And she was born into a wealthy upper class family in India, and she loved to dance. But unfortunately, she was not allowed to learn because respectable, women from respectable families don't learn the art form. However, she, put her dreams aside because that was not something that she could do. And then, when she was a young woman, she met and married a Dutch, was he a philanthropist, or I think, who was doing some work in India, and his name was George Arundel. And she married George, and with him traveled to Europe. When she went there, she had the good fortune of meeting Anna Pavlova, the ballet dancer. And because she loved to dance, she took lessons from Anna. And she even performed with Anna Pavlova. And I think I have a picture of her performing. That's her. But Anna Pavlova had been to India, and she had seen the beautiful art forms of India. And so she convinced Rukmini to go back to India to learn the art form and to present it to the common population, so that people could enjoy the beautiful art form, which is exactly what she did. So she came back home to India, where she and her husband came back. They settled in India. She learned the art form, and the entire training, usually takes about 5 to 6 years for you to finish the entire course. And so she started as a young lady, and she finished the course, and she performed her debut performance, which was not attended by anyone from her family because it was, looked down upon. And then she began performing this dance, not in the temple, but in regular auditoriums. She began teaching this art form. And, because of that, because the performances were performed outside the temples, people from all different walks of life, from all different religious backgrounds, they could come and watch the dance, and they could enjoy it. And if there was someone who wanted to learn it, they could learn it as well. So more and more people, began to associate this as a beautiful art form rather than the traditional temple practice, which had fallen into disrepute. So this way, more and more people started learning the art form, they started performing it, and they started performing not only in the southern part of India, but they started performing all over India. And when they did that, the different musical influences, the different cultural influences, all of that started coming into this art form, and it grew and it evolved and it blossomed in so many different ways. So that was why. So had I been born in the 1930s or the 1940s, I would never have been allowed to learn this art form. And so I was really lucky, and I was to have been born at a time when this art form had got back its, glory and respectability, if you will.
Isn't that an astonishing reality of humanity, is that we often have to leave home to really return to find the beauty of home,
Yes, yes, in a way.
I mean, without her, this, as you said, so many people would have been deprived, because possibly as in ill repute, it may have just died out. So,
Yes,
she gave it an extra breath of life that then you were able to sail upon. And having learned it at home and now transported it to another country, do you feel any parallels of your journey, as she gave it that breath of life? Do you feel, that maybe you're giving it another breath in another way in your teaching?
Yes, in a way, in a small way,
right.
Because I'm able to teach the generations here, the younger generation, many of whom may have traveled to India maybe once or twice. And yet, I'm able to help them connect with their heritage, which is interesting and which is important as well, I think. And this connection, I think, helps them identify or, work out for themselves their individual identity.
Absolutely.
Like, they're not really, they might be Indian, they may look Indian, but they're culturally American. So this is one force that can help them, study and exactly place who exactly they are, and establish their own individual identity. So, and I think that is a small way in which I see, because I students come to me when they're 6 years old, and then they are with me till they're about 16, 17, some of them till they, graduate high school. And I can see how they grow and how their understanding of themselves changes, slowly, like over the years. And I think it's a part of, it's partly because of, the art that they have learned. And it's not just, like I said, the movements or the stories, maybe the mythological stories, the little things that we do, like we do a traditional Namaskar, every time they come to class and every time they leave. And that is something that all dancers or Indian classical dancers do. It's the way in which we pay obeisance to Mother Earth, right? We do the namaskars to say, what, for the next 1 hour, for the next half hour, we're going to be stepping on you and stomping on you and jumping on you. But we know you're really, really important because it's, you are bigger than us, than all of us. And it is from you that we are here because of you, really, And so we say that we're sorry. So this, when the kids start learning, they just, okay, this is something we have to do at the beginning of class and at the end of class. And then later on, it becomes a part of who they are, this understanding of the universe being, I think, bigger than them, that there is a force that you have to be grateful to, or and I think I can see that growth in the kids. And so in a small way, I think I'm doing something right.
You're very humble about it, because if you think of the gift that you are giving, and teachers all across the world do this, but specifically the gift that you're giving them, as you mentioned, is that finding a way, cultural identity was easier in a time when travel was less accessible. And people had a rooted cultural identity, but we have such a fluid movement of cultures in and around one another, and there are very few people on the world that are not culturally blended at this point. And so for the gift of helping them find their way through that is enormous. However, the greater gift, I think, is what you mentioned about, that the awareness of we are standing upon something that supports us, and we must start with centering our awareness there, asking it to forgive us for the fact that we're going to be jumping and stomping, but that as you said, that there's something bigger, that we must recognize that our movements have effect not only on this earth but on the others around us, and to give a child that perspective early on as part of just this is the way that we do things. We do it with respect, and we finish with respect. And then when we continue on through our day, we carry that awareness and that sense of inclusivity. We are not being we are not walking through our days in a vacuum. That's an incredible gift, and thank you for passing it on and for reminding us all about it in this conversation. You also have asking of the blessing, I think, as well, tradition in the dance. And
yes, yes, you know, in every performance, and that's even today, we always pray. The first routine or the first presentation is a prayer to the universe, asking that this performance may go seamlessly, that everything would work out well, that you might be able to do your best, and that the presentation will be very, well appreciated, and all of that. So we don't take anything for granted.
That's right.
So and that again is something that the children learn, that no matter what you do, no matter what you achieve, no matter who you are, there are certain things, there are certain forces that are bigger than you. That you have to be grateful to, that you have to be, have to recognize.
Yeah.
No matter what you do. I mean, you might have done a great performance and everyone might be saying, oh my God, you were great, you did a great job, all of that. And you might be feeling on top of the world, but there is somebody who, or not even somebody, or there is some force that helped you do that. Mm-hmm. You didn't do it alone. And that is, again, an understanding that I try to give the students. And by doing, it's a part of the presentation. So no matter what the presentation is, you always do the prayer routine before.
Which helps with the humility. You did not do it alone. But the flip side of that coin is if it came out poorly and if you are not feeling on top of the world, you are still not alone. So exactly. those are two really important sides of that grounding that you're passing on through this tradition is beautiful. So what else would you like to tell us about this? Because eventually I would love to ask about how you are unique. Well, maybe not unique, but you are very special, because certainly there are many people who have these three artists inside them. One is the pure artist themselves, you the dancer, and you also have you the teacher, which is a whole different persona and brainwave, and you the choreographer who works with others to be there to lift them to their artistic excellence while creating your vision through dance. So eventually I would love to hear a little bit about that, but what would you like to tell us about your art and your journey in it at this time?
Well, maybe I can start with your question about, the three parts of who I am now. And well, initially when I started, I was a student, and then I became the dancer. And after, a few years of experience, I would say I became an artist. When I say, I try to separate a dancer and an artist, is because a dancer just, goes through the motions and makes sure that he or she does everything in the right way, in the proper way, in the correct way. But an artist brings, shares something more from her soul, when she's presenting. So, right in the early phases, if I was presenting, say, anger or jealousy or hatred or love or whatever, I would just, make sure that, okay, this is the right action, and this is how I move my eyes when I'm showing jealousy, and this is how I roll my eyes when I'm angry, and all of that. But then, when you transition into being an artist, you think about those roles, and because we all react to all of those emotions in so many different ways. So the way I react to jealousy is quite different from the way my mother did, or it's different from the way you would do, right? Some of us, we rant and rave and get angry, and the others become quiet, or maybe there are still others who just turn, I don't know, vitriolic and want some kind of revenge. We all have different reactions, or I wouldn't say reactions. We symbolize and exemplify those emotions in different ways, in so many different ways. And then you start thinking about it, like, what do I do when I get angry? And then I draw upon that experience to present. So that again is a journey.
Absolutely. To understand your own emotions. I mean,
yeah, to try to understand. It's hard. We never do, but
some of us never ever get around to even contemplating that. We just react. But this is beautiful.
And then you think about, oh yeah, this is what you do, and then maybe you use some of that. So you draw on those life experiences, and then you would use that in your representation. So if you're showing parental love, I would really, the way I would show it today, because I am a parent, would be different, or rather is definitely different from the way I used to portray it when I hadn't gone through that emotion, or I hadn't felt that emotion in me, So all of these, all of your life experiences it's a kind of a reservoir from where you draw when you want to, present. And so that is a journey, in itself. And I think it's still going on. Every day you learn something new, every day you add to your experiences, and every day, something comes out when you are presenting. Then, as a dancer, and as you dance more and as you start performing more, you begin to imbibe the art form a lot more. So you gain a greater understanding of it, and you not only of the actual emotions or feelings or any of that, but even the movements. Like, okay, this is the movement that we do. But you know what? Maybe we can also do this instead of just doing this. So you start thinking, and that's where choreography, you come into that phase of being a choreographer. Oh, you know what? Instead of performing something that I had learned, let me try and create something new. But that wouldn't have come had I not gone through this journey of growing as an individual, as a human being,
right,
and imbibing the art and understanding the art a lot more. I don't think that would have happened had it not been there.
As a choreographer, then, do you have the even deeper complexity of you have three people maybe doing a dance and they have to express jealousy? Do you ask them to express it in the way that you envision their expression, or do you then have each one of their individual expressions of jealousy that you're trying to bring into a group expression? Do you know? Now we have a really complex situation of humanity.
At this point, most of my students are very young, so they have to imagine some of those emotions.
Right.
So if I'm showing like, okay, parental love, and oh my God, this is the baby and this is what you do. So they really haven't gone through that for them to do it. But yes, I do tell them to express it, not changing the format or the technical aspects, but maybe a shoulder shrug, or maybe a lift of the chin, or something like that. So to that extent, yes, I do.
So they have their own little artistic freedom inside of the bigger picture.
Format.
Oh, I love it.
A little.
Fabulous.
Yes.
Could you show us a little bit of some of the things that we've been talking about? Are you of a mood to dance a little, or do you want to continue? We can continue in any way that you want to express this. It's so gracious of you to spend this afternoon with us, you know,
thank you. Thank you for having me.
Sharing these things with us. So.
Yes, I had talked about the Namaskar. That is something that we do, at the beginning and the end of the class. And I could show that to you. So this is very brief. It's very simple. So what we're doing is the whole universe and Mother Earth. We're seeking your blessings, and we're seeking, asking your forgiveness as well for some things that you're doing. Now, another important and interesting part of this dance form are the hand movements. It's almost, like I said, a movement vocabulary. So this is a deer, and this is a bird sitting on a branch. This is an elephant, okay? And this is a lady, or this is a man, or this is a flag, and this is the moon, right? And so these movements are almost like alphabets, if you will. So if you want to say, I saw a deer, you would say, I saw a deer, right? So you can almost construct or communicate an entire story using these hand gestures. So this is a flower, and this is a river or a stream. And then you can have this, I did show you the deer. This is a peacock. This is a peacock. And what else? This is a mountain. Let me go back. This is a mountain. And this is a tree. And this is a creeper.